So the internet is an edge technology. It has no center. It's no coincidence then that it reflects the ideology of the people who invented it. Technology is simply a reflection of human will. Technology isn't accidental. Technology just doesn't come about in a vacuum.
The web's democratic in one way and distinctly undemocratic in another way. And I think a lot of the confusion about the political ramifications have to do with that one word having so many meanings. So it's democratic in that it quite literally delivers power to the people. It essentially opens up participation in the public sphere.
Everybody has a chance to be seen. I think in the past, again, the traditional models would survive around scarcity, which I don't think necessarily is healthy for society, for ultimately a few people to have the control of the creation of all the content within the world and then have the control of all the distribution of the content in the world. Now with the internet, people have access to create and distribute on their own. People can share their own thoughts and feelings, experiences, talents.
I think one of the things that has happened to the first generation of kids to grow up always being online, they have never experienced dial-up or anything like that. They've always had always on. And what I've seen is they have a global awareness that was not present in my generation. They really feel as if this is one world. They also feel as if they are always connected to everyone else. There is a feeling of being connected, that there is a sense of movement forward, the sense of going somewhere was not present in previous generations.
You can actually bring most of what's been so important and, in fact, epical about the internet down to the simple hyperlink. And you can think of a hyperlink as being a new type of punctuation. The old types of punctuation tells you where to stop. Hyperlink encourages you, beckons you to continue. It makes it so easy to continue to the next thing. You have to do the most minimal human action, which is go like this with your finger. I mean, it really couldn't get any less than that. And you are off into the next page, the next world, the next person. We haven't had anything like that before.
The moment you go online, you are recorded as having gone online. You leave a print. People know roughly where you're coming from, and they know you've entered a site. And once you've entered that site, it can say where you're going in that site, where you don't go in that site, what you look at, what you don't look at, what search terms that you use, what documents you decide to display, and how long you're there, and where you go next. And by putting all those things together, we can begin to develop characteristics of information-seeking behavior and use in cyberspace. It's very, very simple, and it's done automatically, which is the beauty.
When you visit a supposedly free website, it's sort of like a sophisticated version of watching free TV. There's content that's being presented to you. Somebody's paying for it. How do they get paid back on the web? Advertisers pay websites in order to put ads in front of them. The main sort of extra dimension on the web is that they're also paying for the information that they get from when you visit websites to help them decide which ads they want to target, where they want to put ads. I mean, TV is not an interactive medium, right? They don't know you're watching. With the web, the information stream goes both ways. When you click on something, they know you spend a certain amount of time on it. Information about what it is that you're interested in gets used by advertisers to figure out how they're going to target. Building up dossiers and files about the people who visit various websites, and they will be able to glean that you're a person who likes to travel, you're a person who likes to cook, so on and so forth, and being able to target you as a person for those kinds of ads is, again, something that advertisers are are willing to pay for. Information that's available about people's preferences on the web enables them to be much more precise in how they advertise and therefore how they sell.
Google on the internet serves almost the same function as the World Bank in the globe. In other words, Google talks about everything being free, open source, and all shared. Google wants every system to be open. But what Google really wants is every system to be open to Google so that Google can serve ads through every piece of technology. They want to be open for a reason. They understand that because they do basically have a monopoly right now on information and on the way it's spread, on the way it's categorized, the way we understand it, that the more open systems they can have, the fewer boundaries that anyone is allowed to erect to anything, then the fewer boundaries there are to Google. There's a myth online that what we're doing is free. All that's happened is the place that revenue and value is extracted from us has been shifted. So yes, I might download a movie for free from the internet, but who's made that movie? Someone who's bought a Macintosh and a Sony camera, made their movie and edited it on Final Cut that they paid for and uploaded it with their, Time Warner, AT&T broadband and stuck it on YouTube, which is a Google-owned server. They've paid 9 corporations for the privilege of making and uploading a movie that they would have simply paid for before to download and watch the movie. You know what I mean? I'm still paying Time Warner for movies. I'm just paying them now to make movies instead of to watch them. Free is absolutely a myth. Only thing that's changed is that there are new ways to extract value from people who are working. Nothing is free. Nothing is free. You are paying for your free guardian. You're just paying for it by buying the computer and buying the online time and upgrading your system and getting the new computer and then buying the computer for your kid, and then paying for the power. You are still paying, you're just paying different companies.
It's hard to say just how valuable personal information on the web is. Coming to them almost for free, that is your clickstream data just comes to the website, comes to advertisers without your actually having to do anything other than just going and clicking on things. So it's a very, very cheap and unobtrusive form of currency. Probably the best thing about it is that it is so unobtrusive. You don't know you're giving it up, and so it seems entirely free to you. And then the consequences of it, maybe you get certain kinds of ads, maybe you get telephone solicitations, but you have no way of knowing that that's because you clicked on 17 things on these 5 websites. And so whatever it is that you're paying for it, you don't really make a connection to the information you're giving up. And I think, frankly, people see cash, individuals see cash differently because it's something that comes straight out of their pocket. The information they give up, they don't see it leaving, and they don't know what anyone's doing with it. One way in which you'll give up personal information is obviously by clicking on one thing or another that reveals the sorts of things you're interested in. But how would they get from that to actually figuring out, for instance, who you are? Well, it's well known in the privacy world that things like your birth date, your gender, and your postal code or zip code will allow people to figure out who you actually are, what your true name is.
Our personal data. Yes, our personal data has found tremendous value. It is any information that can say something about us somehow. Our name, our age, location, email address, phone number, what we do online, what we're sharing with our friends, what we're searching for, anything, literally, even our mouse movement. Even before you click, you touch the screen. Your data is shared with many parties. Ad servers, ad exchanges, demand-side platforms, supply-side platforms. Everyone wants to know what you're interested in and how much your attention is worth. Your attention is put up for auction. The ad from the winner of the bidding is shown to you together with the content you're looking for. And all this happens in a fraction of a second. Don't get me wrong, I'm not against sharing data. But what is particularly awkward here is that our data is traded without us noticing. It's our click, our touch on the screen that generates money out of thin air. If it's so much value with our data, we have no control.
This is the internet of the real. The truth is, these services aren't free at all. You pay for them with your very identity. When you use Facebook, they log everything you do, the pages you like, the people you interact with, even the words in your status updates. Then they take that information, analyze it, and assemble a detailed profile of who you are. They know your habits, your preferences. They can even determine your risk tolerance or sexual orientation. And then they sell that information to advertisers.
Privacy matters because we all need a margin of discretion around our lives so that we can exercise some control over them. The fact of the matter is that we've already long ago given up much of our privacy as soon as we started to email and use mobile telephones. But if you thought about what it would be like if your neighbors knew details of your bank account or your medical record or could listen into your quarrels with your spouse, you would be very disconcerted because you would feel that you were losing control over areas of your life that just belong to you. That's why privacy really matters. And the great worry that we have in the digital age is that we've already given so much of it up, both to private agencies and to public ones. Every single time we go online, every time we look at a website, every time we send an email message, every time we make a phone call with our mobile telephones, we're exposing ourselves, we're stripping ourselves naked to the view of anybody who is interested to find out what we're doing. We know already that private agencies are keen to look at the pattern of use of the internet that we indulge in so that they can target advertising at us. And governments in the Western world, indeed in the world at large, are anxious to keep a record of who people are talking to, what kind of information they're finding out, so that they can detect patterns of, that suggest crime or terrorism in the offing. And in all these ways, therefore, we expose ourselves to view through the use of these devices. Not that we would want to give up using these devices, they're just so useful to us, but they do expose us.
The hot topic of social media, I think that people are only beginning to understand what it might mean to post things about yourself in a public forum that then might be looked at by people that you work with or might be looked at by people that might employ you in the future. Or, that whole area, I think, is where people are now only beginning to have a think about what that might mean for them. I think that social media is interesting. You are always framed in social media context in a world that you create. You don't have to accept people as your friends. You don't have to let the whole world see it. It's not really anonymous in the way that I think sometimes people get scared that it is. I think this all comes back to education. Actually, you need to look at what 11, 10, 9, 8-year-olds are doing and how they're interacting with technology. And for me, they're the people that both can teach us but also need to be educated themselves. And this is where I agree with Tanya Byron's report about technology, that it's all good and to be embraced, but you have to underpin it with proper education about exactly those issues of identity and privacy.
Lack accountability, people feel free to say whatever they want, and that's one downside to anonymity. Unpleasant and difficult, and has a lot of negative consequences, and it's much easier to libel someone.
I think the great value of thinking deeply and reading deeply and concentrating in general is that we begin to develop a unique personality, a unique intellect. That's ours and ours alone. And that requires, I think, deep thought and in the ability to make our own associations and our own connections about things we understand deeply inside our own mind, rather than relying on, you know, the associations and connections that might be out in the world and that we might access through hyperlinks, for instance. The human self and the human personality becomes much richer when we can slow down and when we can think deeply and engage with information in more than just kind of a cursory manner. But a few years ago, as my use of the web kind of picked up, I found it much harder to sit down and engage with a book. After a page or two, my mind would start wandering. I'd kind of lose the focus, have to go back a page to reconnect with the argument. And what I noticed is that the sensation I had when I tried to read or really concentrate on anything was that my brain, my mind, wanted to behave the way it behaves when I'm at my computer or online. It wanted to check email. It wanted to click on links and jump from page to page. I began to make the connection that, you know, in a really an unmistakable way, my use of the net was changing the way I think, in changing my ability to do things like concentrate or contemplate one particular piece of information or read through 100 pages of a book. And I began talking to other people, and many of them had a very similar, were suffering from a similar type of affliction.